Alright, hello and welcome to the third episode of my Retro City Rampage Clone in Unity tutorial. Today we're doing the first part of weapons. I'm going to split it into two parts. So this part is going to deal with lock-on and aesthetics mainly, and basic firing of bullets. And next episode is going to deal with the more technical side of stuff like collisions and whatnot. So yeah. I'll just quickly go through what I've basically programmed and what we're going to learn today. See, on the player there's like a weapon and you can see it turns and stuff, and it's basically just a sprite. Basically the weapon has a sprite and the weapon control script, and then two spawn points and whatnot. And so if you press F, you fire bullets based on the direction. And if you press Shift, it enables lock-on mode. So you can see that the one in top corner is locked onto. So if we say go here, we just keep walking, the bullets keep firing and the gun follows them. And if we press E, we can cycle through it. And if we go Q, we can cycle back through it. So yeah, so when the bullet goes in the direction of the enemy that you're locked onto. And it just highlights the enemy that you're locked onto for ease's sake. I could draw a sprite over it, but I'm not going to, just for simplicity's sake. Now, first thing, small bug from last time. It was in the person movement. Oh, and someone wanted me to zoom in on the code to make it easy to read, so I've done that a little bit. If you need any more zoom in, just give us a shout. I think I left the flip on left up to true last time, but it should have been false, so just switch that. Now we've got 4 scripts we worked on today. Simplest one is just weapon container. It's not used fully at the moment. It's just base for what I'm going to work on next time. Sorry about that. Alright, so it's basically got 2 sprites, normal version of the sprite and firing version, the name of the gun and the ammo. All I really use is the normal sprite at the moment, but these ones will be used later. So that's just a container. We've got the player weapon controller, which is weapon control, basically just what the player uses to fire. Now, when I do any AI and whatnot, I'll have to reprogram a version of this for enemies, but that'll be in a while, so we'll have to worry about that for a bit. So basically, we've got the current weapon, which is the weapon container. The sprite renderer of the weapon, the person movement script on this object. We've got 3 transforms. So the left is firing bullets or creating bullets that start to the left of the player. Right is ones that start to the right, and the current one is the currently active one. So based on the direction that the gun faces, if you're going left, it'll spawn to the left. If you're going right, it'll spawn to the right. That's that. Then we've got lock-out bullet, which is just the bullet that it creates. Simple. Lockout bool is just decide whether lock-on's true or not, and we've got the object it's locked onto. So yeah, just get sprite render and person movement here. If the current weapon's null, it'll try and set the current weapon. Wait, how much? Current weapon. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. Basically, if there is a weapon in the weapon container, the current weapon, then it'll just make sure the sprite's correct when the script starts. But if there's not, it won't do anything. Actually, that's a good point. I just realised that it'll let me fire bullets even if there isn't anything. So, if current weapon not equal to null, then it'll do all the firing bullshit. There we go. Alright, so set current weapon is basically just sets the current weapon to normal. The normal sprite of the current weapon. So I'll just show you, we've got 3 different examples. So I've got a Thompson instead of a shotgun. So as you can see now, the sprite's a little bit different. And if I change to the pistol, again, slightly different sprite. Yeah, another try. problem with living on the main line between Manchester and London. You get a lot of trains going past. But yeah, I've also got an overloaded version of the set current weapon, which allows you to give a weapon. Basically, say if you were picking up a weapon or changing weapons, it'd set the current weapon to whatever you passed into it. And okay, so fire weapon. This basically just fires the weapon. So if you press F in this case, and if the lock-on's if you're not using the lock-on, then it'll just fire the bullet in the direction that you're facing, which is the direction is worked out by the bullet script, which I'll go over in a minute, and just creates the bullet at the position of like the current bullet spawn position, which is assigned later in the script. And if the lock-on is true when you press F, it will work out the direction between the player and the locked onto by taking away the position of the locked on. It takes away the position of the player from the object it's locked onto and normalizes that. So basically, normalized. It's sort of like. Basically, if you know how, say, 5, 5, 5, and 1, 1, 1, they're both vector freeze in the same direction. But this one is normalized because it goes at a sort of like unit, sort of like a standard pace, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but if you just move the bullet by this one, it'd move like at 5 times the rate in the same direction as this. So normalizing it basically just means this. It'll always be between 0 and 1, the values of the X, Y, and Z. So it'll be sort of relative to everyone else. We used it in the person movement as well when we were moving by two vector freeze to get the diagonal movement. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so the weapon layer monitor controls like whether the weapon appears in front or behind the player. So this makes the gun appear, I think it's behind the player if you're going up, because you'll be facing away from the camera, so the gun will be in front of the player and you won't be able to see much of it. And then this basically makes it in front of it. Basically, the compare to method basically just checks, like, is the direction in the person movement script like exactly equal to up? And if it is, it'll return 0. So that'll mean it's facing up, and it'll be -1. The same thing for right up and left up. Okay, yeah, that's pretty much it. And we've also got the weapon direction, monitor, which controls the direction the gun faces and which bullet spawn it uses when you fire a bullet. So basically, it works differently whether you've got locked on or not, true or false. So if you're not locked on and the direction contains right, so it'll spawn the bullet in the right I'm not even deciding that. I've got to do that. Where equals left. Yeah. It'll assign the bullet it'll assign cur to be right, so all bullets will spawn right after they've been fired. And I just forgot to initialize it at the moment, so if I pressed F without moving, then it'll just cause an error. And it'll also flip the sprite of the gun, so it will be flipped and look like it's facing the other way. I don't know why that took so long to get out, but it did. And left basically does the inverse, where it'll set the flip to false and set the bullet spawn point or core to left. There is a pretty shit name for it actually, but oh well. Okay, so or if it is locked onto, and if the position X position of the object you're locked onto is higher than the player's X position, which would mean that the object you're locked onto is to the right of the player, then it will basically set X to true. It will flip the gun and set the bullet spawn point to be the right value. And if it's not, so that'll indicate that it's either like above or to the left, then it'll set it to left, the spawn point of the bullet to be left, and stop flipping the x-axis of the gun. Right. Alright. So basically, this is the lock-on controller. Basically, when you press left shift, it turns it on and off. And when it turns it on, it'll get the first locked-on target from the NPC Controller script, which basically just stores all the NPCs in the scene and has a method to go through and return them based on a modifier provided, which I'll explain in a minute. And basically, it'll set the locked-on enemy's sprite color to red to highlight that that's the one that's locked onto. And if you turn it off, it'll set the locked-on sprite color to white, which is basically just the default. As you can see here, that's the sprite color when it's white. Now, the lock-on monitor is basically just pressing the E and Q keys to cycle through the array of NPCs that you can lock onto, which are basically just NPCs that are visible by the camera. So, like, yeah, I'll show you. Alright, so press shift. You see I go through all four. Now, if I move one of these out of the camera view, like him, it'll only cycle through the three. Well, it should. Oh, that's a bug. Oh well. I swore that worked. Alright, let me show you. Okay, so shift. Yeah. No. Fuck. Alright. Damn. Oh well, I'll just cut this bit out and hopefully I'll have to add a bit at the end to see why that doesn't work, because I thought it did. Oh well. So yeah, basically, when it goes through the array of currently locked on stuff, it'll set whatever, when it's changing, it'll set the color of the locked on to white, then if it passes in a positive value, it'll go forwards through the array, and if it's a negative value, it'll go backwards. And it'll set the new locked on component, not locked on sprite, to be red. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And it does a similar thing for Q, but it just uses a -1 to go backwards instead of 1 to go forwards. Alright, the bullet script basically uses transform.translate in the direction provided if it's not null. So that'd just be like if a bullet was created without a gun or the direction being assigned, then it won't move at all. And it has a timer which just counts down from 5 to 0 and then destroys the object. Basically just to stop, if a bullet doesn't hit anything, it'll just keep travelling if it didn't have this, and basically slow down the game and kill a lot of bullets. So we've got two versions of set here. One that takes the person movement, which is used when a bullet is fired without having a lock-on active, and basically just gets the direction from the person movement, and based on that it assigns day to be whatever direction the player is facing. And it also has an overloaded version of the method where it uses just a vector 3 that's passed in, which is used for lock-on, and assigns day to be that. And this is just a basic NPC controller, which I'm using for the blah blah blah. Oh shit. Okay, it's basically an NPC controller, which I'm using to monitor the NPCs in the scene. So it has, I know it's quite bad to just have like an array that you're constantly checking for, so it's going to change when I start implementing like NPC spawning and whatnot, there's be a list where they get added to or removed from, so I don't have to like check every frame. But for now, it'll do. Basically, it's a function that returns a game object when you pass through the mod, so and has a counter in it. So basically, it just sets the return value as we're currently locked on 1, and then if the counter is equal to NPCs.length minus 1, so that would imply that it's reached the end of the array, and the mod is more than 0, so that would imply positive, so moving forward it'll just cycle round to 0. And else if the counter is equal to 0 and the mod is less than if the mod is less than 1, is less than 0, which would imply that you're going backwards through the array, then it'll just set it to the last element in the array. I wonder if that's the bug actually, if I had this code in the loop. Let me just try that. I like to fucking see shit. Can't cycle between those two for some reason. Why doesn't it like that one? Let's see. What happens when I have it without? Yeah, it goes through all of them. But when I move one, it doesn't like working anymore. Right, if I move this. So it's more than, maybe that well looks. Try that, maybe. Right, so move you out now. What happens if I move you out? Yeah, that works fine. I'm just going to check. I think I fixed it. I'm just going to make this public just so I can see how the array is. Okay, so on Game Controller, we have the 4 NPCs that we found. We can cycle through all of them. Now we move one, and on Game Controller, we still have 4, but we can only cycle through 3, which is normal because one of them is not visible by the camera. There's a little hang though. Sometimes it stutters when he's going through the array. Which one is that? Which one's the rep? NPC target 1 is the target, which is that hand on. NPC target, which is the second element. NPC target 2 is, I'm assuming that one, yeah. So it's reaching the end of the array. it reaches the end, but I think it works. Okay. All right. So basically, it works well and sort of okay, I guess. Whereas it'll just hang when it's going through an array, but if you press the lock on change a second time, it'll go fine. So I will fix that bug for the next time and tell you. You can just jump with weapons and whatnot. Yeah, so I will just go quickly run through those scripts again, just so you can see them. So we made the change here to here, sorry, on line 129 to set sr.flipx to false. We've got the weapon container, which is just 2 sprites, a name, and an ammo value, which aren't used yet. We've got player weapon controller, which is just used, which is just put on the player weapon, which rather than the actual player, it's like the weapon is a child of the player game object. So just here, scroll through. There we go. The bullet script just moves it, counts down, and checks for the direction. And the NPC controller, which looks for game objects with a tag NPC. I'm sorry about the squeaky chair. And then it just allows you to cycle through it. So yeah, cheers for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that. We're gonna play loud and quiet. The Hotline Miami pack is on itch.io for £1 to buy, maybe a little bit more because of tax, but it's a steal. So yeah, bye.